If James II had not fled Britain, leaving his throne voluntarily, there was a strong chance he would have retained it. Nevertheless, he did not, and for many in the political nation, James II had broken the solemn contract between a monarch and their people. Ideas, promoted by Locke's two treaties of government, suggest that a people will have the right to change their government if it fails them, and this situation clearly shows a monarch failing their subjects. When James II fled, a convention parliament was called to resolve the issues in Britain. Whether or not the invited invader William intended to take the throne is unknown. What is clearer is that those who invited him did not have a plan in place for what happened next. The hastily elected Convention Parliament met for the first time on the 22nd of January 1689 and was split on what to do. Radical Whigs wanted to declare William king immediately. However, others wanted a role for his wife with the hereditary right. A compromise was met and the crown was offered to them both. A declaration of rights was presented with the offer as conditions and was read out at the coronation ceremony. At the end of 1689, the declaration was modified and much of it became law known as the Bill of Rights. The intention of this lecture is for you to consider how revolutionary the Bill of Rights of 1689 and the Act of Settlement of 1701 were in limiting royal power. Knowledge-wise, you'll be able to explain how the Bill of Rights and Act of Settlement limited royal power. Skills-wise, to analyse the Bill of Rights, 1689, find 9 of its clauses. And behaviourally, to evaluate the impact of the Bill of Rights and Act of Settlement and make a judgment on which one had the most impact on royal power. The Bill of Rights is held aloft similar to the Magna Carta 1215 and the Petition of Right in 1628. Much of what is included in the bill relate to abuses of royal prerogative by Charles II and James II, with arguably the most important being the free and regular elections of MPs seeking to avoid intimidation and election tampering. Also, it clearly states that the army exists with the express permission of Parliament. From 1689, various mutiny acts were passed, meaning the king could not court-martial soldiers at will without the consent of Parliament. The acts were only valid for a year, so the king needed to turn to Parliament regularly for approval, as William will be in a state of war for almost 9 years. Due to the fact a standing army was not prohibited due to the Bill of Rights, the Mutiny Act will be renewed every year until 1879. This was a useful way to limit the power of the monarch. There are subtle differences between the Declaration of Rights presented to William and Mary at the beginning of the Revolution and the Bill of Rights passed into law. The Declaration is a basic restatement of traditional rights, but conflicts between Whig and Tories meant it was watered down. Much of the declarations around issues of elections and parliaments were included, but they were not part of any condition for William to take the crown. The Crown and Parliament Recognition Act of 1689 confirmed the acts of the Convention Parliament, while acknowledging William and Mary as joint sovereigns. In Scotland, corresponding legislation was passed under the Claim of Right Act 1689. The Bill of Rights is a simple restatement. It did clear up some grey areas of the prerogative. Christopher Hill states the holding of frequent parliaments does not mean absolutism would not creep in. There was no provision for ensuring elections were free or regular, and what did free actually mean? It was the Triennial Act of 1694 which did more than the Bill of Rights. John Morrill states as a statute law it could be revoked by any future parliament. He also believes the bill did not form a contract between king and people, and the only way to remove a monarch still was by rebellion or parliamentary pressure. William was still able to choose his own advisers. It is wrong to think that restrictions on the crown were limited to 1688 and 1689. In 1701, the Act of Settlement was passed. Its key purpose was to ensure a smooth succession from William and Mary, ensuring the crown bypassed any potential Catholic heirs to the throne. The succession was to pass to the House of Hanover, a German royal dynasty. As it was clear that William and Mary had no surviving children, and Anne appeared to be unable to successfully produce an heir, it was decided to find a suitable heir. The House of Hanover was linked via Sophia, granddaughter of James I. She died before being able to inherit the throne, so it passed to her son, George I. The Act also barred Catholics and those married to Catholics from the succession, and all monarchs were required to be members of the Church of England. It was more than just about succession, though. Judges could no longer be dismissed without parliamentary consent. This was left out of the Bill of Rights, but came back and was a reaction to James II's attempt to remove disloyal members of the judiciary. Also, another demand from 1689 was that royal pardons had to be declared irrelevant in cases of impeachment. However, this was included as the Tories hoped to be able to impeach William's Whig advisers. This part is a reaction to the policies of William, as well as the clauses over the religion of the monarch, as William was a Calvinist. Also included was the fear that William would just leave Britain, so a proviso stopping the monarch from leaving Britain without parliamentary permission was added. This clause was repealed in 1716 when it was clear no monarch would flee. As a response to the 9 Years' War, which defended the Netherlands, it was passed that no monarch was able to declare war without consent of Parliament. Privy Council also had to discuss all matters regarding the governance of Britain, and not just decided by the monarch alone. Also important to Parliament was that only British-born men were allowed in the Privy Council, the Houses of Parliament, military command, or be granted lands or titles. It is clear that the concept of divine right monarchy was damaged by the Revolution settlement of the Bill of Rights and the Act of Settlement. It was no longer possible for monarchs to claim God-given power, as now their authority was approved by the people via their parliamentarian representatives. The Whigs dominated Parliament during the reign of William, and this continued into the 18th century when Robert Walpole became Prime Minister. The Whig view, which came to dominate the narrative of the Glorious Revolution, states the Bill of Rights maintained and restored an ancient constitution and was therefore a restoration of what James II had broken. This was a compromise by both Whigs and Tories in Parliament. What was important was Parliament was the supreme form of government, and in 1721 a new constitutional monarchy started. This was put into Edward Baldwin's school textbooks from 1806. The Marxist view, however, supported the more traditional orthodox view, with only amendment in that it favoured the elite and confirmed the power established by the Civil War. Such historians as Christopher Hill and A.L. Morton made this view popular. In recent years, revisionists such as John Morrill point out the previous arguments of historians are null and void, as the only thing which changed was the line of succession. There was no constitutional monarchy, but rather the destruction of a divine right. Constitutional monarchy came into existence in 1721, and Parliament was still only the richest 2% in the nation. Both the Bill of Rights and Act of Settlement, therefore, was on the slow march of progress towards a constitutional monarchy rather than the end product, as it was not until 1760 that the Crown Estate placed the monarchy's property under the control of Parliament. The intention of this lecture was for you to consider how revolutionary the Bill of Rights of 1689 and the Act of Settlement of 1701 were in limiting royal power. Knowledge-wise, you will be able now to explain how the Bill of Rights and Act of Settlement limited royal power. Skills-wise, you need to analyse the Bill of Rights 1689 via 9 of its clauses, and behaviourally, you need to evaluate the impact of the Bill of Rights and Act of Settlement and make a judgment on which one had the most impact on royal power.